It was almost 2 months ago that pundits around the country were getting the pink slip ready for A&M coach Kevin Sumlin. Well, don't look now, but the Aggies are playing solid football ever since that UCLA game, and we'll find out how they're doing it as we go one-on-one with Olin Buchanan, Texas A&M football columnist at TexAgs.com, on the OFN Meeting Room with Greg DePalma. It's October 19th, 2017. I'm Greg DePalma. Thanks for tuning in to the OFN Meeting Room as we talk Texas A&M football with Olin Buchanan. Olin, thanks a lot for taking the time to talk to us. I know you're at the airport. Can you hear me okay? There you go. I got you, Olin. Can you hear me okay now?
Yeah, I can hear you fine.
That's all right. I know it was that's probably not the worst sound, though, that you could be hearing at the airport.
Yeah, I like that song. I like that one.
Yeah, so thanks a lot. You're on your where are you heading anywhere specific, or you coming back from Florida, or what are you doing?
No, actually, I'm coming back from Nashville. I'm in Houston. I'm coming back from Nashville from the SEC basketball meet today.
Oh.
You know, A&M has an open week in football, and then meeting my wife here to fly down to South Padre Island, Texas, to take advantage of the open week.
Okay, that's awesome. So you cover both the football and basketball teams for the website?
You know, if A&M's playing it, we're keeping up with it.
How's the basketball program looking this year?
It's projecting very well. They were picked at the media poll third in the SEC preseason. I think they have a chance to have a really big year. They could be as good and maybe even better than the team that went to the Sweet 16 2 years ago.
Wow. All right. So we'll definitely look forward to talking some basketball with you in the future. No question about that. Of course, we've got Prime Sports Network where we produce the shows from. That's an all-sports network. We talk basketball there. So looking forward to doing that. But let's talk some football, first of all, Olin. And Texas A&M, that first game of the season, there's so many things to go over as far as that game and the whole situation, and I'm sure you probably have had a lot of time and you've heard an awful lot of stuff since then, and definitely around the week or two preceding the game. But I think now for me on this network, I've been a big Kevin Sumlin fan. I really feel that Kevin Sumlin, matter of fact, a couple of years ago, I was saying that I think Kevin Sumlin has what it takes to, if he ever wanted to be an NFL head coach. That's how highly respected I think of Kevin Sumlin. Now, I don't know exactly how things transpired leading up into that game, but how does one game kind of bring out the worst in some of the fans as far as wanting Kevin Sumlin? Because it couldn't just be one game.
Well, it hasn't been one game. It's been that the tendency to fade in the second half of the season the last 3 years. A&M I think was ranked maybe in the top 10. I have to go back and check. I think they were 9th, 6th, and 9th going into November in each of the last 3 seasons, or at least in the second half of the season. And they've always, each year, they've collapsed in the second half of the season. They've never finished, I think, without Johnny Manziel, higher than, I think, 4th in the SEC West. Again, 3 straight 8-5 finishes. There are those that feel like you're not paying a coach $5 million a year to finish 4th and go 8-5.
Mm-hmm.
And so then when you open up the season with a monumental collapse and blow a 34-point lead in less than 20 minutes, of course, you're going to have those that are upset with the direction of the program and feel like that it's underachieving. Of course, you're going to hear their voices of discontent.
Yeah, and they were pretty vocal for a little while there, and even in the next couple of weeks, things still. I mean, that maybe they were lucky that they were facing the opponents they were facing, because I don't know, maybe their confidence took a shot, and I know they had some quarterback issues as well with the quarterbacks going down in the UCLA game, and Kellen Mond, who didn't play well in the UCLA game. But I think people kind of forget that, is that you lose your quarterbacks in that game, and Mond goes 3 of 17 as a freshman. But then after that, the Arkansas game really seemed to change the season.
Well, it definitely got them going in the right direction for a while, and they just seem to have Arkansas's number. The 2 previous games before that, they did not look good in beating Nicholls State, a team they should blow out, and then they actually had to come from behind to beat Louisiana Lafayette.
Yep.
And so they kind of stumbled into that Arkansas game and got behind in the fourth quarter. Christian Kirk returns a kickoff for a touchdown, but then they give up another score right back. And Kellen Mond then takes them down, completes you got this freshman in a very high stress situation, a lot of tension, and he completes a fourth down pass on the way to getting a game time field goal, and then throws a heck of a nice pass to Christian Kirk in overtime to win the game. So, yeah, I would think if you had to point to a place where the season started, I guess, trending upward, it was right there when they won that Arkansas game. They played tough games since, they've had, I think, ever since the Nicholls State game. I should say, excluding that game, they trailed in every game.
Wow.
The next week they were behind in the fourth quarter to South Carolina, 17-10, and came back and won that game. Of course, they lost to Alabama, but the feeling was that they were very competitive and only lost by a touchdown. That's pretty good against Alabama.
That's right.
And then last week got down to Florida 17-10 and just really dominated the fourth quarter. Gave up 27 yards in the entire fourth quarter and scored on all three of those possessions. So, things are trending upward, and some of that heat has kind of eased up on Kevin Sumlin. But the fact of the matter is that there's going to be those that are still going to be thinking, okay, what are you going to do in the second half of the season, especially November? If they close fast, no problem. If they if they have a collapse again, you're going to hear more of those cries to make a coaching change.
Yeah. But I must say, this is one thing I love about college sports, especially, when you watch these football games. I'm watching an Alabama game, and I'm, I think especially people who don't really follow college sports as much, maybe they're more professional fans, you would never see or hear, unless maybe if you're a Seattle Seahawks fan, maybe, but you would never see or hear the level of enthusiasm like at the Alabama game, like the entire last drive for Alabama. I mean, if you didn't even know the score, you would have thought that the game was tied. But realistically, you kind of knew, well, yeah, this is not looking good for a few minutes. You're like, okay, I mean, the chances of them coming back and winning this game now are like zero almost. But the fans were into it, like the game was tied, and it's just an incredible atmosphere at College Station, and that's something that at least the fans are still into it, and maybe they were also very proud of the effort. And that has to really help moving forward for this particular team, and it did show a lot of guts for them to come back and win these games, considering kind of start to the season they got off to.
Yeah, I think one of the good things about, if you can find a good thing in a loss, one of the good things about that is that that team, I think for the most part, came out of that Alabama game instead of celebrating playing close, was really kind of upset that they let an opportunity to pull off a big upset get away. If not for a couple of fumbles that were not necessarily, great plays by Alabama, but more careless mistakes by A&M, that could, A&M would have had a chance to win that game. They threw an interception late in the game when you had a receiver wide open in the middle of the field, but that stuff like that's going to happen when you have a freshman quarterback, and they blocked a punt after that, but you don't want to trade 6 points for 2, and so they had their opportunities. I think they were frustrated that they weren't able to take advantage of all those opportunities, and I think that's a good thing.
Now, when you take a look at the skill position players on offense, unless Christian Kirk decides to turn pro, and he might, that's possible. Yeah, he will. There you go. Keith Ford's gone, but Travion Williams will be back, and he's a big part of the offense, leading the team with 440 and 5 touchdowns. And then you got Mond. So, from what you've seen of Mond so far, how convinced are you, maybe is the right word, that he's going to turn out to be a good one?
Oh, I have no doubt in my mind. And I felt like even before the season started that he was the best and most talented quarterback on the roster, just wasn't quite ready. And, that was that was obvious in that season opening loss to UCLA, even though I don't put that on him, the way he played poorly in the second half
Sure.
was more about the coaches putting him in a really bad, let's say, unadvantageous situation and not helping him out the way they should have. But no, he has a lot of talent, a lot of ability. I think he's throwing the ball much better at this time than anyone could have expected. And there's no doubt he has the ability to make big plays with his legs. He's done that just about every week.
Now, speaking about the coaching staff, that's the other thing that I was impressed about. Someone when he really assembled this staff over the last few years with Noel Mazzone on offense and getting lucky to get John Chavis on defense. It's a really good staff. So, what is it in general, especially when you take a look at Sumlin? What is it that you've seen from him that you like about what he's done with the program?
Well, I think the biggest thing is when he came into the SEC, I really think that the wide open style that he wanted to play that worked so well in Conference USA, he really thought that was the style that could win at the SEC level. And at first, it seemed like it would, and he thought, I really think he thought it was that early success was about his system and not about the fact that he had 5 eventual first-round draft choices playing on that offense. And I think he's realized that he's had to change his approach. So now you're seeing this year, you're seeing a team that runs the ball a whole lot more. A&M is no longer a team that's going to throw to set up to run.
Okay.
They're more traditional. And he realized that, hey, I'm going to have to make some changes here and change my philosophy somewhat. And I think that's difficult for a lot of coaches to do. And, yeah, he did get lucky to get John Chavis, but he also gave John Chavis $1.7 million a year.
That is true.
So, there was the thinking here in College Station. There were, the natives were getting somewhat restless because the defense had not made giant strides forward. But until this year, now they're starting to show that. But I don't think you could ask John Chavis to come in with the same and coach the same players that were, quite frankly, part of a hideous defense and expect, completely different results. Now they're having some turnover in personnel, and some young guys that weren't quite ready to play last year are now making big impacts. I think while A&M is not an elite defense by any means, I think if you've watched them at all, you can tell they're significantly better than they were.
Yeah, and they're not they haven't really even been the last couple of years a very experienced team. So coming back from the previous year. But take a look at that defense and some of the guys that have stepped up so far this year. We'll start with Armani Watts. Right now looks like the best pro prospect on the defense. I know Dan Shanka feels very highly of him and what he's going to look like at the next level. Having a fantastic season. What kind of a player, the NFL, what kind of a player are they getting?
I think Armani's he's a big play guy. I kind of liken his let me say this carefully. I liken his coverage skills to Earl Thomas, the guy at the Seahawks that went to Texas. I mean, he's a guy that can break on the ball and make has good hands. Can really just the old quote ball hawking kind of guy. He's a good tackler too. He's not the biggest guy you'll ever see, and that might scare some GMs off, but he's a pretty good tackler. He's very active. He's in, you'll see him involved all over the field for A&M because they need him to be. But he's also a big play guy. He has that knack of getting that big interception like he did in overtime against Tennessee last year and in overtime against Arkansas this year. I mean, he gets a lot of interceptions. He's a very active guy. So I think he has a really good professional future. And quite frankly, I'm not even sure, we've had this debate, if he was the best player on the A&M defense or even in the secondary until Donovan Wilson got hurt against UCLA. So that's been kind of a setback for the Aggies. But when that happens, you just see Armani start, trying to do even more and raise his performance level even more.
Yeah, and a couple other guys I know that Dan likes on defense. You got Jacobin Henderson up front, and also Priest Willis, another corner, senior corner for the team. And then of course you also have Quaylen Cunningham, excuse me. So are they also three of the top players? And then statistically you've got Damian Ratley, Terrell Dodson, Arturo Alaka, Landis Durham. There's a lot of talent there.
Yeah, it's funny. Some of the guys that came into the season they're really counting on have taken a step back. And I don't necessarily think it's because they haven't played well, but the Aggies have gotten some real pleasant surprises. Now, Jacobin Henderson he's a really good player, and he's going to play in the NFL. He's a defensive tackle. I don't know that he's their best defensive tackle, but he's the guy that seems to make more of the wow plays. I think Kingsley Kiki, who lines up next to him, is the guy that's more consistent. Quite frankly, they said the last three games have been the best three of his career. Other guys, Landis Durham was a guy that they brought in, I believe, as a linebacker, and looked like he was going to be that career backup. That the best thing that he was going to contribute was, he was going to boost the team's average grade point average. It looked like that was going to be his career, and yet he's moved to defensive end, and this year he's come absolutely out of nowhere and really emerged as a heck of a pass rusher, and now he's starting in front of Quaylen Cunningham and leading the team in sacks. So he's been an amazing surprise. And Priest Willis was a starter last year. He had some injury issues, so they moved him to the nickelback, and he's done okay there. But they've had a couple of freshmen, in particular, kid Devion Renfro, who stepped in and is really showing some great signs there. So they feel like that they have more just physical ability and raw talent than they've had probably, definitely on the defensive side of the ball since Kevin Sumlin's been here.
Yeah, I mean, look, you only give up 27 against Alabama. That's saying something. And now there comes the bye week, and then after that, you do have 3 games. The Aggies with 3 home games in a row after the bye week. That's got to help them, as far as those second half Blues to kind of get off to a good start. What about the matchup with Mississippi State, which is the next game? They've kind of been up and down, but you kind of expected after the win against LSU that it was going to be awfully tough for them to go to Georgia and Auburn and come out of there with wins, but they got blown out in both games. Now they got healthy with BYU when that's going to happen. They're not having a good year. They get Kentucky this week before next week's game. So what do you think about that game next week against Mississippi State?
Well, A&M never takes anything against Mississippi State for granted. The first year with Johnny Manziel, they blew them out in Starkville, but ever since then, they've been some tough, hard-fought games. Dak Prescott drove them crazy a few times. I think they beat him twice, but both of those wins were hard-fought. They got demolished 3 years ago in Starkville, and then last year, they went in as a big favorite and fourth in the first college football poll rankings, and they go out there and I think it was Fitzgerald. Why am I struggling with the name? Nick Fitzgerald.
Oh yeah, the quarterback. Yeah. Yeah.
70. He goes 75 yards on the first play of the game for a touchdown. So and A&M lost that one 35-28, and Fitzgerald's still around, and they're very well aware of his ability, and he gave them fits last year, and Mississippi State just always seems to play very well against A&M. So even though that game is in College Station, I don't think anyone's going to mark that down as a W until they actually get it in their back pocket.
A few other guys on offense I wanted to talk about, and matter of fact, I think when I was going over the list of all these guys on defense, because I really was surprised I was writing so many of them down to prep for the show, and then you've already added some guys I wasn't even aware of. I threw Damian Ratley in there, but of course he's the wide receiver along with Christian Kirk and Osborne. Now Osborne's only a freshman, What kind of a career does he have? And then of course you got Christian Kirk, who, as you said, looks like he'll be coming out this year. He's having another big year, including another kick return touchdown, which is going to make him that much more valuable at the next level.
Yeah, and Christian also had a big punt return last week to set up the game-winning field goal. So, and he didn't have a look. Christian Kirk is so good that last week he had a bad game, and he had a 50-yard reception to set up one score, and he had a 40-something yard punt return to set up another score. That's a bad game for Christian Kirk. So, and they're going to miss him when he's gone. Jamon Osborne is a guy who's playing really well for a freshman. He had some issues in the first couple games holding on to the ball. He seems to got that taken care of, and he's concentrating more. He's not a game breaker at this point right now, but they have high hopes that he's going to be their next star receiver.
Okay.
And quite frankly, I don't think you expect him to step in here and be that guy as a freshman, but you have to like what you're seeing from him. He's showing the signs that he could be somebody really special. Now Damian Ratley's the guy that's really interesting. His very first game at Texas A&M, early in the game, he against Arizona State had a chance to get about a 70-yard touchdown pass and dropped it. It's like his confidence went with it, and he has for 2 years just been a guy that's on the team.
Okay.
That I think last year he might have had 2 catches.
Okay.
I think it was, and yet this year he's kind of regained that confidence, and he's come out and become this big play threat.
Yeah.
That if you put too much emphasis on Christian Kirk, that they can hit you with Damian Ratley, and he's making big plays. He had a big reception against Alabama for about 25 yards to set up a touchdown, and then he had, I think it was a 44-yard catch, something along those lines, last week against Florida that set up a score. So Damian Ratley's been one of the most pleasant surprises on the team this year. Definitely the biggest surprise on the offensive side of the ball.
Yeah, he's averaging actually 25 yards per catch with 12 so far for the season. What about another? We talked about Williams and Ford at running back. What about Kendall Bussey? He's only a sophomore. He's contributing.
Yeah, he is. They brought him in at some times when they needed, if somebody's hurt or somebody needs to get a rest, and they can bring him in. And look, he's not as good as the first two, not yet anyway.
Sure.
But they don't feel that the drop off is dramatic at all. And he's had some moments against some of the lesser opponents that let him play, and he runs like you would expect a guy who's a first teamer to run against those guys. He's had over 100 yards, and I do think that they feel very confident in the next couple of years, or next year when Keith Ford is gone,
Mm-hmm.
that Kendall Bussey's going to be able to step in and be the second part of that 1-2 punch with Travion Williams. They like him a lot. They just have a lot of depth at running back.
And Shane Trapuka is also somebody to keep an eye on. I know he's somebody that I've noticed is getting looked at Ourlads scouting services. He's a senior.
Yeah, he's a heck of a punter. A&M's been fortunate with punters here, and he's that guy that sometimes he may kick it 38 yards, but he may give you 4 50-yarders in a game. But the most impressive thing about him, he has this incredible knack of killing the ball inside the 10. I've never seen anybody is so consistent at it. I think it was last year. It was something like he didn't have a touchback.
Wow.
And a third of his punts were killed inside the.
That's
the
pretty
10.
good.
So I don't know how you develop that knack.
Yeah.
Or maybe if you're just really lucky, but he has this ability like nobody I've ever seen to kill the ball inside the 10.
Who were you most impressed with as far as some of the players that you got an opportunity to see Josh Rosen, of course, but as far as let's say even just Alabama, they have so much talent. Was there any particular player on Alabama besides the big name guys that impressed you the most?
Well, I don't know if you consider Damian Harris a big name guy or not. I think so many of the people look at, of course, Jalen Hurts and Bo Scarborough, and then you got this Harris kid. Uh, and if people don't consider him a big name guy, they should change their mind because he had a 75-yard touchdown run against A&M where he blew through a hole, and he was in the end zone before you could before you could scratch your head and wonder what was going on. I mean, it was like a blink. And then he did it again last week against Arkansas. So here's a guy that's had two 75-yard touchdown runs in 2 games, and I wouldn't be surprised if he goes 3 for 3 against Tennessee this week. So I was really impressed with him. But with Alabama, they just have so many good big time players. I saw another running back I liked a lot last week for Florida. They got that freshman Malik Davis, and he's picking up between 90 and 100 yards consistently, and he's doing it behind, I think, maybe an average offensive line and with a below average passing game. So you can defenses can really focus and concentrate on stopping the run, and yet that kid's very productive. So I really like him. And I saw a receiver at Arkansas, and I don't know in the future if they're going to have anybody that's going to consistently get the ball to him. I think his name's Jonathan Nance, and he's not the biggest guy, but he's crazy fast, and he's a big play guy. He's a big play waiting to happen if they can find somebody to get him the ball after Austin Allen's gone.
Yeah, he was. I think was he a JC guy? I think.
I gotta admit, I don't know.
Yeah, I think he was. Yeah,
is.
I think he was. Yeah, I think he was a junior. I think he was a transfer. Yeah.
But we really came into that game not knowing much about him, and we found out. All about him. Right away. I think he had 2 50-yard catches in that game.
By the way, what about the kid Taven Bryan? Because he put together he had a heck of a game against you guys, and he had like a couple of series where he just looked like a beast.
I gotta admit, and maybe that's just on me, focusing too much on A&M, but I just don't remember. And I wish I did.
Well, like I said, it was a couple of series where he was just dominant. It was I think in like the third quarter maybe, and he made like 3 plays in a row where it was like sack, forced almost near sack, and another like big play, and he just penetrated like in 3 out of 4 plays, and they're pretty high on the kid. But
the guy from Florida, right?
Florida, correct, Taven Bryan. Yeah.
I'm remembering now. Yes, that guy. He lived in the A&M back.
Yeah.
I think he's the guy that's the wrestler, or maybe it's
they got that nickname for him. That the coach gave him that Wyoming nickname. I forget what it is.
That guy was in the. Yes, now that you've refreshed my memory, no doubt about it. That guy was. I don't know what he does against everybody else, but if he plays like that, like he did against A&M, you can put that guy on the All SEC team right now.
They call him Rootin' Tootin' Cowboy Joe.
Yeah, it's funny if he's a Cowboy. Why didn't he show up at A&M? Because
there you go. There you go. Absolutely.
They had some boots for him.
Well, look, you guys have enough guys on defense. That sounds like a team that we just went over. A lot of players that if this team comes together, what do you think is the best possible outcome for the season? Of course, when you're in that division with Alabama every year, it's always a nightmare, and then you lose to them, and then your chances of going to the SEC championship game usually are gone. So what's the best likely scenario? Because, again, three home games, 1 against Auburn, and that's definitely a winnable game because they got nothing out of their passing game. And then games on the road against Mississippi LSU won't be easy. But what's the best case scenario for this team?
Well, yeah, the best case scenario is obviously 10-2. I don't know that they're going to finish 10-2, but I think they have like you said, the ability to. I don't think there's a game on that schedule that you would of the remaining 5 that you would look at and say, okay, the Aggies cannot win this game.
Yeah,
they get Auburn here, even though the road team has won all the games in the series, but they do get Auburn in College Station. It looks like LSU's coming to life, though. So there's not a game other than New Mexico, I think you say they're absolutely going to win either. So I think because even though Ole Miss is struggling, A&M has taken better teams than this one into Oxford and got out by the skin of their teeth with Johnny Manziel, Mike Evans, and guys like that. So I don't think the Aggies will take any of those games lightly. I don't think they can afford to. I think they could play well and win them all. And if they play average, they could lose any of them too. So
yeah,
they're going to have to play. They're going to have to keep playing well. You know, they're doing well, but they're not blowing anybody out. They're
sure.
just making they're just making the big plays when they have to. And you know, the Aggies will take that if they can keep it going.
Yeah, and of course a lot will depend also on their performance and keeping Kevin Sumlin or not, and certainly hope that happens. I think they got a nice thing going on there. I know fans can be impatient. I completely get that. But I think they're going to be better off for it if they can close out the season strong. It looks like they got a nice future ahead of them with Mond at quarterback. So, great job, Olin. Thank you very much being at the airport and taking the time out to talk to us. Thanks for telling the pilot to park the jet so you can have a private conversation with me.
You bet. Thank you very much for having me on.
Take care.
All right, you too.
All right, Olin Buchanan. And by the way, you can check out his work once again at TexAgs, that's ags.com, TEXAGS.com. And you can also follow Olin on his Twitter handle at Olin Buchanan. That's Buchanan, Olin Buchanan, Texas A&M football columnist at TexAgs.com. We have one more interview as far as the OFN meeting room today. That's at 4 o'clock. That is going to be with running back Demario Richards from Arizona State. So we'll find out how Demario's feeling, how the team is feeling after the big win against Washington. And Arizona State now, they're going to be on the road this week, and they're going to be taking on Utah this week. And really they don't have, with Washington and Stanford out of the way, the schedule is not bad for Arizona State the rest of the season. So, with USC not playing up to par, Arizona State, and of course we've already talked a lot in the last 2 weeks about Khalil Tate at Arizona, but with Arizona State playing USC at home a week from Saturday, that game could be for the division. It really could. So watch out. Because the division right now that Arizona State's in, the one with USC, that's the South Division. That is not as strong as the North. The North has Washington, Stanford, and Washington State this year. But the South, with USC being down at this point, we'll find out a lot more about USC when they go to South Bend on Saturday night. Maybe the win over Utah will get their season going the way they won. But Arizona and Arizona State are definitely going to have a lot to say with what goes on in the South Division. And we'll talk to Demario Richard at 4 o'clock. And also, don't forget to, and I'll leave you with this, Texas A&M fans, by the way. Don't forget to, for your NFL fans, to check us out at 2:30 for our NFL preview with Tony Mejia. So we'll have a Week 7 NFL preview coming up at, about an hour from now. So I got a lot of work to do. Excuse me, but I got to run. We'll look forward to having Olin back on this network again before the season ends, hopefully, especially if things continue to go well. Hopefully, not if something goes bad with Coach Sumlin. So that'll wrap it up. We'll see you, by the way, tomorrow. Don't forget, tomorrow as well, 3 o'clock for our college football preview edition of the Ourlads Football Network. So NFL preview coming up at 2:30, Demario Richard at 4, and our college football preview on Friday at 3 o'clock when we take a look at the big games going on this weekend in college football. So thanks for tuning in to this Ourlads Football Network production. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter at PrimeSN. Check out all the great depth charts available at Ourlads.com for pro and college football, and we'll see you next time.